Hey designers, I'm your instructor, Erin. Today we will be taking a deep dive into all things images, including ethical image use and image file size. If you stick around until the end, we will finish this video by creating an animated photo GIF inspired by the work of Richard Avedon. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to my channel, and hit that notification bell so that you never miss a tutorial, and let's get started. Okay, so here's the first thing you need to know. Anything original that you create, a photo, a painting, or even a class paper, is automatically protected by copyright. You don't have to register it or put a copyright symbol on it. However, registering the copyright with the United States Copyright Office provides significant additional legal benefits and something to consider as you advance in your field. Copyright gives you control over how others can use your work. They cannot legally copy it, sell it, or publish it as their own without your permission. Now, some creators want to share their work more freely, and that's where Creative Commons licenses come in. These are licenses that let creators decide how their work can be used, maybe allowing free use with credit or free use as long as it's not for commercial projects. Any creator can go to the Creative Commons website and obtain licenses for your content. It's free. Almost every Creative Commons license comes with one big rule: attribution. That means if you use someone's work, you have to credit them. When obtaining a license, these are some of the different icons that represent different rules around your intellectual property use. Some of these licenses add extra rules. This icon here stands for share alike, or SA, meaning if you adapt the work, you have to share your version under the same license. This icon here that looks like an equal sign stands for non-derivatives, or ND. That means you can't change the work, you can't make any edits or remixes, etc. And then this icon right here with the $ canceled out stands for non-commercial, or NC. And that means that you can't use the work to make any money. Now you're going to notice that almost all of the licenses listed up here have an icon with a person inside. This icon stands for attribution because the majority of Creative Commons licenses require attribution with the exception of public domain. So what is the public domain? The public domain is a collection of creative works that no longer have copyright protection or never had it in the first place. That means that anyone can use, share, or remix these works freely without asking for permission or attributing the creator. However, it is still considerate to credit the creator. Here's how a work might enter the public domain. Sometimes the creator chooses to release it there, and other times the copyright expires. In the US, most works become public domain 70 years after the artist's death. That's why you'll see a lot of older paintings, books, and pieces of music available for free use. So if you've ever seen an artist reimagining a Van Gogh painting or a musician using a Mozart score, that's possible because these works are public domain. Now, not everything old is automatically public domain. Rules will vary by country, and some works may still be protected. But the main idea is that if it's in the public domain, it's safe to use. When it comes to modern free image sources, these are a few of my favorites. This website I'm on right now is Pexels. I have another tab open on splash.com. We also have Pixabay, which not only has photos, but also has vectors and illustrations and sound effects. And then Wikimedia Commons. These are very reliable public domain websites that have a lot of content you can choose from, specifically images. I will make sure to provide links to these websites in the YouTube description. All right, so even though public domain works are free to use, you need to be cautious of scams. Some people pretend that an image is free or in the public domain and then later try to claim it as theirs and demand money. So this is a story that I heard from an attorney. A con artist uploaded images to the public domain. Later, a graphic artist, within their legal right, downloaded one of the images, altered it, and sold merchandise featuring it. Months down the line, after the graphic artist made a ton of money, the con artist pulled their work off the public domain and reclaimed the copyright and sued the artist. And they won. The artist had no proof that at the time of download, the image was in fact public domain. The con artist continued to do this to several other people before he got caught. Now, this is rare, but it shows why you should always be cautious. Some tips to avoid image scams. 1. Only download images from trusted sources like the websites that I just showed you. 2. Keep a record of the license or the download page in case there's ever a dispute. A screenshot with a URL and a date can save you headaches later, and most creators have a downloadable link to their image licenses. And 3, when creating conceptual artwork, it's still a good habit to alter the images if the license allows you to. When I was a student, my professors suggested that we alter images by about 60% when necessary, so that it no longer resembles the original. Now, there's a time and a place for this, but ultimately you can only do this if the license allows you to edit the work. So remember, the public domain is very safe, but still make sure you verify your sources and keep records of the licenses. This habit protects you and keeps your work legal and professional. So what do you do if someone uses your work without your permission? Well, the first step would be to contact the person politely and do it in writing so that you have a record of it. Explain that the work is copyrighted and ask them to follow the copyright or licensing rules. If that doesn't work, some creators share the issue with their followers if they're big on social media, and loyal fans will often help spread the word and can pressure the person to remove or correct the use of the imagery. The only way to fully protect your work is to go to court. But most of us don't have the time or money for that. If the person is profiting significantly from your work, it might be worth consulting with a copyright attorney to see if legal action makes sense. So when can you use someone else's copyrighted work without getting permission? That's where fair use comes in. Fair use is part of copyright law that allows people to use copyrighted work in certain cases, generally for education, research, commentary, or news reporting. For example, as a college instructor, I can show you copyright images in my lectures or homework examples so that when I teach a concept, students can better understand what I'm teaching them. But even then, I prefer to use public domain images or my own work. Or if I have to use copyrighted images, I'll find one with a pretty flexible license. As students, you may use copyrighted imagery to practice your art and design techniques, but you cannot send them to exhibition, sell them, or publish them as your own without first making sure you obtain the license and making sure that you're following it. Remember, fair use is not automatic. It's evaluated on a case-by-case basis, and sometimes only a judge can decide if it counts. So it's smart to play it safe whenever possible, especially when creating professional or commercial work for publication. Let's take a look at a real-life example of copyright infringement. In 2008, famous artist Shepard Fairey, known for his street art style graphics and clothing line, created the Barack Obama Hope poster. It became iconic, widely shared, and very profitable. But the next year, the Associated Press sued him. Why? Because he based the poster on a copyrighted AP photograph. Fairey argued that it was fair use, saying he transformed the photo into something new. He heavily altered the image, but that wasn't enough. The lawsuit dragged on, and eventually, Fairey pleaded guilty to destroying and fabricating evidence showing that he had used the photograph, and he was later sentenced to 2 years of probation, 300 hours of community service, and a fine of $25,000. He also had to come to an agreement with the Associated Press for how they were to split future profits of the image. Oh, and when I say profits, these are big profits. Here is an image of one of the original prints by Shepard Fairey. You can see it's even more incredible than the cheaper, simplified reproductions. The original print has a wider value range, grungy texture, and interesting patterns overlaid on the image. This single print is worth around $300,000. All right, designers, now that we've covered image ethics, let's dive into some technical image basics, starting with the difference between image size and image scale. Image size is how many pixels your image has. You can find your image size in viewing apps like Preview or Adobe Acrobat. You can also find image size in Photoshop. Image scale is how big your image appears in a layout, and you can shrink or expand a photo, and while the scale changes, the number of pixels stays the same. Think of it like Play-Doh. You can squeeze Play-Doh into a small little ball, or you can stretch it into a long sheet, but it always contains the same amount of atoms, unless you were to purposefully break it apart. All right, so here I have a public domain image I downloaded from unsplash.com by the creator, DM David. My MacBook automatically opens images in Preview, and in Preview, if we hit this little eye icon, which stands for information icon, you will see that the file size is a 2.7 megabyte JPEG image, and that its pixels are 4,053 by 5,278 pixels. That's the image size. Now, we can change the pixel size in Preview. I'm going to show you how to do that. I will say it's not my favorite way to change an image size. I prefer to use Photoshop. But if we go to this little marker icon up here, it'll say Show Markup Toolbar. We'll click that. Then you'll see this icon with these different boxes. That is the Adjust Size icon. And here, it's showing me what my image dimensions are, and I can change the width, height, and resolution. And it's telling me what the megabytes are, and it's going to show me what the megabytes will change to. So let's change this to a 1,000 pixel image. When I change the width, it automatically changes the height as well because this lock button is on, and these are locked together. So now I'm taking this from a 3.8 megabyte image to a 193 kilobyte image. A kilobyte is significantly smaller than a megabyte. I'm going to hit cancel and show you how to do this in Photoshop. Okay, so once you open Photoshop, you can go to Image Resize by hitting Image in the menu and going to Image Size. We'll see the key command is Alt-Option-Command-I. You can also make sure that you have the Move tool selected and click on the paste board, and then under Properties, if you scroll down to Quick Actions, you will see a button that also says Image Size. All right, so the biggest reason why you would want to change the image size, meaning the width and height of the pixels, is to make sure that you're changing the file size or the storage size. Now, I want you to notice one thing. When we open the image in Preview, I'm pretty sure it said the image was something like 3 megabytes, I believe. Yeah, 2.7 megabytes. Now, when we open it in Photoshop, it's telling me that the image is 61.2 megabytes. So why is that? Well, when an image is saved as a JPEG, it is compressed to reduce file size, resulting in smaller files that load faster on the web or that are easier to attach to your email. And while this results in a more optimal file, you also lose some quality. So when you open that JPEG in a photo editing software, it uncompresses the photo for editing. So when we open image size, it's going to show us the actual size of the image, which is 61.2 megabytes, way bigger than the JPEG. So personally, the reason why I prefer to resize images in Photoshop instead of Preview is I get to see the actual image size. And if I want to save it as a JPEG again, I can do that, but I also have options to save it as different file formats, like a PNG or a TIFF or a GIF or whatever it is that I need. So I want you to notice something right off the bat. The resolution right now is at 72. If I were to bump up the resolution to 300, everything is linked, so the pixel size just changed with the resolution. The original pixel size, however, and look, our image also changed from 61 megabytes to 1 gigabyte. Now, a lot of people think that the resolution itself will increase the file size of a digital image. That's not true. It is the pixel width by height plus other color properties that make this number here. So let's keep the resolution at 300, but I'm going to paste the original number back in, which was 4053. And you'll see that the image size is still 61.2, just as it was when the resolution was at 72. It is a little annoying that when we change the resolution, the pixel size changes, but you'll see here that when we keep the original width at around 4000, but we change the resolution, that image size stays around 61.2. So the reason why I'm showing you this is so you understand that the resolution, this number, does not impact image size, this number. It is the pixel width impacting that. So let's say you want to decrease the file size. Maybe you want this to load on a website, but you're not even sure what the number should be. Well, we do know that the average HD monitor is 1920 by 1080 pixels. And if this image is going to go on the web, the majority of people who are going to see it are probably going to see it on monitors that are 1920 by 1080 pixels. I'm going to show you another way to bring down image size, which is often overlooked. So Photoshop also has this crop tool. And if I click it, I can crop the image. Now, as I crop the image, the crop tool is actually going to be deleting pixels. Why? Because delete cropped pixels is checked. And what happens when we have less pixels? Well, our file size gets smaller. And if I were to click this and go back to image size, we went from about 8 megabytes now to 5.22 megabytes after cropping some pixels off. So in some situations, you may be able to crop off parts of an image to reduce the size as well. Okay, so why does storage size matter anyways? Well, different platforms, websites, software, and hardware all have different storage limits. For example, if you were to send an attachment in your Gmail, Gmail has 25 megabyte attachment limits. If you're applying for a job portals oftentimes max out at 5 to 10 megabyte PDFs. So if you're a graphic design student hoping to send your portfolio to a job one day, you got to make sure that that PDF portfolio fits within their parameters. As a web designer, when I'm designing websites using software like Webflow, I can't use images that exceed 4 megabytes. I have to make them smaller. In fact, they prefer it if I use an image that's less than 1 megabyte. So the amount of room an image takes up on your computer is measured in bytes. 1,000 bytes equals 1 kilobyte. 1,000 kilobytes equals 1 megabyte. And 1,000 megabytes equals 1 gigabyte. Gigabytes are pretty big, and these YouTube videos that I make for you, I generally try to keep them under 10 gigabytes. They range from about 4 to 8, and that's a pretty good number for a video. You generally don't want a photo to be a gigabyte. In design, you generally want to keep photos under 4 megabytes. All right, so we went over resolution a little bit in Photoshop, but what exactly is resolution? Printers measure resolution in dots per inch, or DPI, and monitors measure resolution in pixels per inch, or PPI. Since pixels do not have a physical, measurable size, resolution allows us to allocate a certain amount of pixels to a physical measurement of an inch. The higher the resolution, the more detail an image holds per inch. So resolution is important when converting the digital to the physical by printing. However, for screens, resolution doesn't matter for the final output. A 1000 by 1000 pixel image will look the same on the web no matter if it's 72 dpi, 300 dpi, or even 1 dpi. However, it's still generally recommended to use 72 dpi when designing for screens. The reason why is that typography within your design software is measured in points, and 1 point is 1/72 of an inch. So if you were to plug in an unreasonable resolution number, like a resolution of 1 or 10, it would really mess with the point system when you're typing, when you're using typography. It's going to mess with your rulers. So a good rule of thumb is to just keep your screen graphics at 72 ppi, but ultimately know that it doesn't actually matter. Resolution really matters for print graphics. It's generally recommended to always print at 300 ppi. Having worked in a print shop for several years, I can tell you that you can get by with using a slightly lower resolution to print. I have printed graphics as low as 180 ppi and still have had a decent result. If you want the absolute best result, though, 300 ppi is recommended. All right, so to make sure you fully understand my point, I have 3 files open. Each file is 1000 by 1000 pixels. This file has a resolution of 300 ppi. This file has a resolution of 72, and this file has a resolution of 10. And I will prove it to you by going to image size, see resolution of 10. Same with this one, resolution of 72, and resolution of 300. As we flip through these files, you're going to notice 2 things are different in Photoshop. Pay attention to the rulers. I just toggled them on and off so you can see the rulers. In our 300 resolution file, it's about a 3¼ inch file. Under 72, we have a 14-inch file. The rulers have changed. And on our 10 resolution file, we're past 100 inches. As you change the resolution, the rulers change because remember, resolution is about converting pixels to a physical measurement, pixels per inch. So on the screen, resolution doesn't matter, and you'll see that as I zoom in, they don't look much different on the screen. One other difference that I'm going to show you, if you grab the type layer, if we double click the T, on our 300 resolution file, our type is 45 points. All I did to make these images was just copy and paste the layers, and yet you'll see that on our 72 resolution file, the same type that was just copied and pasted over is 187 points. And on this file, our 10 resolution file, this is where things get crazy, and this is why you don't want to put a crazy low resolution down. When I double click the type, it says my type is 1,350 points. That's a little insane. To further prove my point, I've exported each of these files so you can compare. And if we open them in preview, you're going to zoom in and realize that the 10 resolution file, it's a little grainy as you zoom in. It's just as grainy as the 300 resolution file, and every JPEG is going to be a little grainy if you zoom in and clear when you zoom out, so you're not stretching it. And there's our 72. And one other thing to notice now that we have the info tab open, they're all around the same number of kilobytes. Our 10 resolution file is 81 kilobytes. This is 89 kilobytes, and the reason why it's a little bigger is that there's another character, so each character adds some kilobytes. 72 resolution is 82 kilobytes. So they're all around the same storage size. So going back to my main point, while the resolution does not really matter for the output of screen graphics, I would still recommend you keep a reasonable resolution of at least 72 ppi, so that way your rulers and your text layers don't get totally wonky on you. All right, we are about to start our Photoshop activity. I'm going to try to incorporate brief art history lessons that relate to each activity because if you are one of my college students, art history is an important part of your curriculum for your degree, and maybe this will give you a leg up for when you get into your art history classes. So today we're going to be looking at Richard Avedon. Richard Avedon was an American photographer who grew up working in his parents' clothing store. This early exposure to fashion paved his career as a fashion photographer. While he is most known for his fashion photography, especially photos depicting dynamic movement of his models, he also explored conceptual photography and photo documentation. Due to his fame, connections, and broad exploration of subject matter, some consider him to be the world's greatest photographer, and he is definitely one of my favorite photographers. These are some of Avedon's images, many shot for world-renowned magazines. He is one of the pioneers of capturing subjects in motion, and while he was a fashion photographer, sports photographers or any artist working with motion and movement could learn from his compositions. For today's activity, we are going to apply what we've learned about image ethics using public domain, modern-day action photos that capture moving subjects, similar to what we see in Avedon's photos. We will also practice new technical skills like resizing images, creating text overlays, and compiling everything into a looping GIF, similar to the style you might see in an Instagram ad. And yes, Photoshop can make GIFs. I know there's a big debate on whether or not we say GIF or GIF. I always say GIF. I don't care how you say it. Let me know in the comments how you think this is pronounced. All right, before we get started, let's have a quick discussion about file organization. Staying organized is critical to your success as a design student, and here is the system that I'm going to recommend for our class. So if you right-click on your desktop, you can create a new folder. I have already created one that I'm going to show you, and since I'm not sure which class you might be watching from, I've just labeled mine class name, but if you're in like my Art 161 class, you can name it Art 161. If you're in Design 210, you can name it Design 210. And let's open it up. And inside this folder, I've created a few other folders. One folder for each project, labeled 01 with the project name, 02 with the project name, and 03 with the project name. You would, of course, be naming these according to the name of the project. And if we open this up, I have other folders. So you'll notice that I really like to name things 01, 02, 03, 04. And why is that? Well, computers have the capability of organizing folders alphabetically or numerically. By numbering them, I know they'll always appear in order if I go up to this icon right here. That's the organizational icon. Right now there's no order, but if I just click name, bam, they are automatically in numerical order, 01, 02, 03, 04. Now, you can choose how you want to organize these. You can choose to organize them by date if you want. I really like organizing them by name. Okay, so for project organization, I recommend having a folder for inspiration, any images that might inspire the project, or notes or thumbnails, a folder for any of the original images that you're gonna download, and then edited images, and then final exports. For some projects, you might include a few more folders based on the nature of the project. Let's go into our inspiration folder and take a look at some of the GIFs that I've downloaded as inspiration for this project. Now, Preview does not play GIFs unless you hold down the spacebar. So if I hold down the spacebar, you'll get to see the GIF. That's one. And let's take a look at another one. So these are a couple GIFs that our project is inspired by, and I'm gonna have us make a GIF that would work really well as like an Instagram ad. So that way you have a portfolio item by the time we are done. All right, so now let's download our images for this project. We will be using unsplash.com, which is my personal favorite of the public domain image websites. I'd recommend you make a free account on Unsplash. You can search for very specific images. When you are looking at images on Unsplash, this plus sign right here will let you add an image to a collection. A collection is kind of like a Pinterest board or a folder where you collect images. This arrow button is a quick download button. That will download a medium size of the photo, but if you go up to download here and then click this arrow, you can choose what size of an image you would like to download. Now, I have saved the images we are going to use in our collection. So once you have an account, your collection folders will be here. You can click there. It takes me to my profile, and I have some images ready to go. So we're going to download this woman in a blue dress. For the sake of practicing resizing, we are going to download the original biggest size of the image so that way you can practice resizing these images. If you download anything smaller, you're going to run into issues with the way that I've formatted this assignment. So just download the original size. Once you download it, you'll see it pop up in your downloads here. You'll also see a pop-up at the bottom here, letting you know that you can give a shout out to the original photographer. It gives you a link to copy and paste for attribution. However, because this is the public domain, attribution is not required. So what is my number one recommendation for you when using online images? Documentation. We are going to take a screenshot showing that we got this image off of a public domain website. I'm even going to open up my little taskbar here so we see the date. And on a Mac, all you have to do to take a full screenshot is click Command-Shift-3. And the screenshot shows up at the bottom left, and then it's going to save to my desktop. You can also click Command-Shift-4 if you would like to select part of a screen to screenshot. So my cursor has changed, and all I can do is click and drag, and now I have screenshotted just part of the screen. I believe on a PC, the key command is Windows-Shift-S to take a screenshot. Screenshots automatically save to my desktop on a Mac. I believe on a PC, they save to a screenshots folder. Take a screenshot, Command-Shift-3. Now let's grab this guy who's doing something that would break my hip. Let's download that at the original size. And again, Command-Shift-3. All right, so now that we have our images and our screenshots, let's organize them in our project folder. Okay, so I already have a folder titled Original Images. Let's double click that. And I've created a folder for the licenses. So let's go ahead and select our screenshots and drag them into the licenses folder. And if you ever use an image with a Creative Commons license, that file should also be saved into the licenses folder. I'm going to find my doc at the bottom, my download saved to my doc, and let's drag our images into the folder. And it looks like I accidentally downloaded 2 copies of each of them because I was prepping for this lesson last night. All right, so now that everything is in their proper folders, everything is nice and organized, we are going to start just by resizing our images. And by resizing, I mean reducing the number of pixels, which also reduces the file size. To show you why that matters, I made a sample GIF using some of the original unedited images downloaded at their largest size. If we double click this, see how long it took to load? They didn't load immediately. If we hit the info button, it says that this GIF is 13.4 megabytes, and that is way too big, especially because GIFs are supposed to be small, fast-loading files on the web, and ideally need to be under 4 or 5 megabytes so that they can load quickly and be shared easily. So let's go ahead and resize our images. I'm going to click and drag to select all 3 of them. And then I'm going to drag them to my dock and drag them right to my Photoshop app. All right, so from here, we know our 3 ways to change the image size. We could, 1, make sure that our Move tool is selected and click Image Size under Properties. 2, we could go to Image image size, or 3, use the key command Alt-Option-Command-I. All right, so I specifically want to resize this image to 1920 by 1080 pixels portrait. And I want to do this because that's the size that Instagram uses for Reels and Stories. So we are going to treat this activity as if we are creating an Instagram ad. So because these are linked, the minute that I type in 1920, the width automatically changes. And unfortunately, it's not 1080, which is the size we need. So let's try to unlink it. And then we can change the width to 1080 and hit OK. But what happened? Now the image isn't proportional. So we're going to hit Edit, Undo, Image Size, and find a way to scale this down that keeps it proportional. So you guys remember the crop tool that I went over? Let's go ahead and grab that. One of the nice things about the crop tool is the crop tool up in the options panel has an option for setting a ratio. Luckily, they have a 16:9 ratio, and 16:9 is the exact proportion of a 1920 by 1080 pixel image. So let's go ahead and click 16:9. And it came up as a landscape orientation, so how are we going to change that? Right here are these two little arrows that essentially mean we're going to swap the width and the height. So let's swap the width and the height. And now we have a 16:9 crop, and before we complete this action, we can move the football player so he's kind of in the composition in a nice way. So I want to try to I want his foot in the whole composition. Generally, when you have a figure, if both of their feet are in the composition, they just look a little more grounded. And we're going to hit this check mark, and that means OK. Once we have the image cropped, we can go back to Image, Image Size. This time, make sure that our link is checked, so that way these change together. And if I change the height to 1920, the width automatically changed, and it changed to 1080, the exact ratio we're looking for. I'm going to hit OK. And now let's do this for each image, starting with grabbing that crop tool. Now that we've already set it, it will already be a 16:9 ratio. Then you can go to Image, Image Size, drop this to 1920 by 1080. And you can see this is dropping from 37 megabytes to 5.93 megabytes. So, all right, same thing with this image. And I actually want a slightly different composition. Once a ratio is set, you can scale a crop box down and it will stay that same ratio. And I just want this guy a little bigger in the box. Hit OK. Image, Image Size. And we're going to do 1920 height by 1080. And awesome, this has dropped from 18.9 megabytes to 5.9 megabytes. All right, so now that we've resized our images, let's remove the background from each of these images. In this photo, I'm going to click Remove Background in the contextual taskbar. This option works really well when there is a high contrast between your subject and your background. In this photo, we don't necessarily have like a fully high contrast in color, but what we do have is a blurry background and a clear subject, which creates enough contrast that I think this will work well. This is not always the most precise method depending on the photo. Generally, I do prefer to make a selection first, which I'll show you in a different photo. All right, if we go to our toolbar and in our selection tools, look for our object selection tool. It's right here. You can hover over different areas, and when they highlight pink, that means that you can select that particular object. You can also just click and drag and it will kind of take a random guess. And here, it highlighted the subject. It even highlighted the skateboard. So I'm going to show you a little trick. Let's just say it selected something you didn't want, like the skateboard. I can go ahead and grab another selection tool. Let's just grab the polygon tool or the lasso tool. It doesn't matter which. If I hold down my Alt or Option key, and while I hold down my Alt or Option key, I can select this selection. Now I've just deleted the selection. See, now the marching ants are not around the skateboard. I can also add to a selection by holding down Shift and trying to reselect the skateboard. And now I've kind of reselected the skateboard. It's not as precise. I do want to have the skateboard selected, so let's go to our handy dandy History tab, open that. The History tab shows me all the things that I've done, and I can step back, 1, 2, and now I have the skateboard selected. So now that we have everything we want selected, all you have to do is go to the bottom of your Layers panel and click this little button. It has a dark circle and a white rectangle. It looks like the Japanese flag. That is your Layer Mask button, and we're just going to click that. And now we have added a mask and masked out the background. A little quick tip on masks. When you have a mask, this selection was not perfect. As we can see here, his knee is kind of transparent. So here's the thing with masks. The color black, which is your foreground right now, black will hide and white will reveal. So if we grab our brush tool, and right now we have black selected, I'm going to go to our brushes. I'm going to set the hardness to 100. Bring it down to 46. When it's black, I'm hiding. I'm going to undo that. So I want the color white, and I am going to bring back some of this area where my selection tool did not do a great job. And now we have some of his knee back. When you are manipulating the mask, just make sure that the mask thumbnail here, the black and white thumbnail, is selected and not the photo thumbnail. Let's move on to our dancer. So for this photo, I'm going to select the subject using the Select Subject button in the contextual taskbar. Yes, I could just remove the background, but I'm going to show you how to select and mask another way. All right, so now that our subject is selected, another way we can add a mask is go to Select, Select and Mask. And I generally like to open up this Select and Mask window when I'm working with a subject that has like textured hair or textured clothing, so I can see how well the mask selected the hair. And I'm seeing that it did a really good job of selecting her hair. So now I'm going to scroll down and go to Output 2, and let's just do Layer Mask. In the last video, we did New Layer with Layer Mask. For this video, we're just going to do Layer Mask. So it will put the mask right on this image. All right, now that all three of our subjects have their backgrounds masked out, I'm going to show you how to add a new solid background color. And there's a few ways that we can do this. As usual, there's dozens of ways to accomplish the same task in Photoshop. So I'm going to try to show you a lot of them. For this image, I'm going to click this plus sign and make a new layer and move it below the football player. I'm going to change my foreground color to the background color that I would like. And for this background color, I'm going to do 00001AB. It's a nice blue, and hit OK. Now I'm going to go to Edit, Fill, Contents, Fill with Foreground Color, which is the color I just chose, hit OK. And now I've added a blue background. All right, let's move on to this guy. Same thing, let's add a new layer. Move it below him. Let's change our foreground color by double-clicking the foreground color in the toolbar. And let's change this color to 65EE6B. And that is this kind of lime green, and hit OK. Now we're going to go to our toolbar and grab the paint bucket tool. And all you have to do with the paint bucket tool is make sure the layer you want to fill is selected and fill it. And I'm going to make sure to rename this background. And as we go ahead, make sure you're renaming your layers. All right, so my favorite way to add a color is to go to the bottom of the layers panel and grab that little circle that is black and white. Those are your adjustments. And go ahead and grab solid color. We are going to grab a solid color adjustment layer. And right away our color picker comes up and it adds a layer right in the layers panel. This color is going to be F7EB69 and hit OK. Drag that under, name it background. I'm gonna name this one subject. All right, so now that we've added our backgrounds, we are gonna do a fun outline text effect to each of these images. All right, so go ahead and grab your type tool and click and drag. The font that I am using is BCClut Ultra. You may not have access to that unless you have a full Adobe account. So let's type in the word move. And I'm gonna make the size 351. I'm gonna double click the color. And I'm gonna make the color EEC10E. It's gonna be a yellow. And every time you create a text box, the text box shows up as a separate layer in your layers panel. So I'm going to right click on this layer and find duplicate layer, or you can click Command J. I'm going to rename the bottom layer move original and the top layer move inline. And I'm going to move the original type layer below the subject. And I'm going to select our inline layer and I'm going to set the fill from 100% to 0%. I want you to notice that I'm not changing the opacity, I'm changing the fill. Fill and opacity are different. And so now we're going to double click the layer, and be careful when you do this because if you double click the text, you're going to just highlight the text to rename it. I need you to double click off the text and layer style will come up. Go ahead and click stroke, make sure it's checked, and you'll notice that now our layer has a nice stroke to it. If we go to the stroke settings, you'll see I have my size set to 12, my position set to inside, and my color set to the same color as the fill. If your color is different, you can just double click and select any color and it changes. Make sure it's the same color as the other text layer and hit OK. Now I want to move these together, but if I were to grab one layer and move it, I'm only moving one. So I'm going to hit Command Z. And in my layers panel, I am going to link these two layers. If I were to click this and hold down Shift to try to select the other text layer, it's going to select both text layers and the image layer. But if I hold down Command, click your type layer, hold down Command, click your other type layer, now I've only selected my text layers. And then I'm going to go to the bottom of my layers panel, and do you see this little link icon? Just click that. And now we'll see that our layers are linked. There's an icon there showing us that they're linked. So now, anytime I try to move them, they're going to move together, creating this nice, unique text effect. And I need to figure out where I want to move this. And maybe right here over his dark blue pants, so that way you can kind of see the inline better. So let's go ahead and hit Command again and select both of these layers. And all we are going to do is hit Command C on our keyboard or Control C on a PC. And then go to our other tab and hit Command V. And now they've pasted to our other image. Let's make sure the inline layer is above our subject and one's below. Notice that they're still linked. I want to change the text, so I'm going to double click the T and I'm going to type in your. I'm going to do the same thing for the original layer, type in your, Y-O-U-R. All right, so now we got to figure out the colors. I'm going to double click the bottom text layer, and then under properties, double click the color, and I'm going to give this the color D84D02 and hit OK. Now I'm going to go to the inline layer, the layer above it. We still have to change this color. I can just double click on stroke and the stroke settings come up, and then I can double click color and just grab the color that we just added and hit OK. Now these layers are linked, so all we have to do is grab them and move them to a place where we can see the text clearly. I'm going to put them over his legs because the orange text is more easily seen over the blue pants. And now we're going to move on to our third photo. And all we have to do is hit Command V again because our layers were already copied to our clipboard. So once again, I'm going to make sure that the bottom one is underneath the subject. The inline is above the subject. The layer order really matters. I'm going to double click the T to change the text, and I'm going to change this text to body. If you can't tell already, our GIF is going to say, move your body. Hit OK, grabbing the bottom layer, double clicking the color, and changing the hex code to EE0E4D. And then to change the color of the text above it, just double click stroke, and then double click color, and then just use the color picker tool to grab the color. Anywhere you click, you will be able to grab. So grab that color you want, hit OK, and these are linked, so we can go ahead and move them. And I think this one might actually look kind of cool over her hair. Maybe over her dress. And now we have the images made for our GIF. Move your body. So let's go ahead and hit File, save a copy, and under your class folder, whatever it's named, go to your project, and you don't want to put it in the same folder as the original images. We want those separate. We made a folder for edited images. So let's go ahead and click that. I'm going to rename this image 01. It's already saved as a JPEG, which should be okay. We're going to hit save. I'm actually going to bump this up to 12. We've already decreased it in size enough. Save. Now we're going to do the same thing with this image. File, save a copy. Make sure we're going to edited images. We're going to do image 02. Save it as a JPEG. Bump that up to 12, hit OK. And same thing with this. File, save a copy. Image 0302. All right, so now we're going to take those edited images and import them into a new Photoshop file. But we're not going to make a new Photoshop file the way that I taught you before with File, New. When creating GIFs or GIFs, we're going to want to load files into a stack. So all we have to do is go to File, Scripts, Load Files into Stack. And a window comes up for us to load our layers. So we're going to click Browse. You're going to grab the edited images from your edited images folder. 2, 3. I'm holding down Shift to select all of them. And we're going to hit Open. Now what this does is it's just gonna, once we hit OK, make a file with all of our images already loaded into layers. And the size of the file is just gonna be how big the images already are. So to make a GIF, you're gonna need your timeline window open. So go to Window, Timeline, All right, and now you might have a button here that says create video timeline. I want you to click this drop-down arrow and click create frame animation, and then just click this button that says create frame animation. And you will see one of the layers shows up on your timeline. Now go to this hamburger menu and click make frames from layers. All right, now all of our layers are in our frames. And I think I want to reorder them. I want them to be move your body in that order. So you can click and drag to reorder them. And I'm going to change the timing here. You see how it says 0 seconds at the bottom? You can click this arrow and change it from 0 seconds to 0.5 to 1. I'm going to click other, and I'm going to type in 0.75. I don't want it to be a full 1 second, but I also think half a second is not enough, and I'm going to do that for each of them. Other 0.75. All right, you also want to make sure that you can see the word forever down here. If you don't see that, click this arrow and make sure it says forever. That's the amount of times that this GIF is going to loop. So let's click play, and you're going to get a preview for the image that you're making. And it just forever loops. Move your body. I could see a GIF like this being used as an Instagram ad for like a sporting goods store or whatnot. And so we're going to go ahead and click File, Export, Save for Web. All right, so when this window pops up, just grab GIF 128 dithered. And I know that this all looks like a lot. For now, just ignore all of it. As long as you have your GIF option selected, go ahead and hit Save. It's going to ask where you want to save it. Let's go to our class folder, our project, and this is a final export. So we're going to put it in the Final Exports tab, and we're going to call this, we can call it Action GIF, or just Action Images.gif. And we're going to hit Save. If you want to see what your GIF looks like, let's go to our project. We can open Preview and hold down the space bar. The annoying thing about Preview is that it only plays a GIF once. We can also click and drag it to our open browser. Right now I'm in Firefox, but this will work in any browser, and just drop it in, and then your browser will play the GIF for you, and you'll get to see what your work looks like. All right, so I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned a lot about image manipulation and creating GIFs. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, like and subscribe, and ring that notification bell so that you never miss a tutorial. Thank you for watching.